Hello, Tech fans, and welcome into episode 179 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, originating from TSL's high-tech studios in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. It's been a couple of weeks, but we are back, and we have an action-packed show planned for you today. Coming up, we will discuss a lot of changes in the Virginia Tech men's basketball program as Coach Mike Young's staff looks a little bit different since the last time we did a podcast. We'll talk about the addition of associate head coach Mike Jones and the departure of Chester Frazier and potentially Christian Webster. Plus, the Hokies add a 6'10" freshman transfer from Clemson and Lynn Kidd. How does that help the depth of the Hokies inside? We'll talk about that. Plus, a little bit about the Tech defensive line and football. DaShawn Crawford's entered the transfer portal. And we'll talk softball, baseball, lacrosse at the end of the show. It's all coming up. Episode 179 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. It's great to be back, and it all gets started right now. Whether you are watching live or archived on YouTube, listening on the following platforms: Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or on Stitcher.
Yay, Stitcher.
We are so glad that you could join us as we record on Wednesday morning, May 19th. Our crew today, as always, to my left, he is back with a tan since his vacation. He is our managing editor at Tech Sideline, Chris Coleman. Across the way, he is wearing a graduation, a piece of, what is that actually called, Will?
A stole of gratitude.
Stole of gratitude. We're both rocking the TSL polos today. He is our founder and general manager, Will Stewart. We'll talk about why he's wearing that in just a moment. Behind the scenes, the newly graduated best podcast producer in the land, Malcolm Stewart. And I'm your podcast host, Evan Hughes.
The newly graduated Evan Hughes.
Which we'll talk about in just a moment. It's the first time we're doing a podcast. All four of us are graduates of Virginia Tech.
Nice.
Pretty exciting about that. If you have a question for Will or Chris, we're going to have time to get to those at the end of the show. Be sure to drop that in the YouTube chat. If you're watching, there are three really simple things that could help us out. Will, if you're watching, what could you do right this minute?
You can like and subscribe and then wait until the final video is posted and comment. See, I've got that down pretty pat. I'm kind of rattled, though. You said this podcast was going to be action-packed. Am I expected to do anything other than talk?
You might need to put this helmet on.
That's been done.
Or maybe put that jersey on, which we'll talk about in just a moment, because we do have a couple of changes to the podcast set. One thing that has not changed, though, the Tech Sideline Podcast is proudly presented by the Southeast Regional Training Center. You can help Virginia Tech Wrestling continue on their upward trajectory of becoming the best wrestling program in the entire country. Go to southeastrtc.com today to find out how you can get involved with the SERTC and the development of Virginia Tech Wrestling today. Will, you guys announced it on Twitter earlier this morning. They're back for another year. I know we love the partnership, getting to work with Coach Roby, Coach Frere, the SERTC, and I know you're thrilled to have them back.
Yes, clearly this is a program that knows what they're doing because they've been sponsoring Tech Sideline now for about 3 or 4 years. Now we're really really pleased. And I know we've talked about sponsorships here on the podcast, and I've had some people reach out to me. I got back to them. So if you've reached out to me, I'll get back to you soon. Keep the conversation going. So we really appreciate having them on board again.
So you've got gratitude on right now. Again, it's kind of an exciting day. We haven't done a show since late April.
I know.
And Malcolm and I are both now graduates of Virginia Tech. So all four of us are alums. Kind of exciting.
Yeah. So people were asking us, well, what happened to the podcast? When are you coming back? And I'm like, well, our students are in the middle of exams and getting ready to graduate. So very cool. So yes, Malcolm walked on his Pamplin group was the very last of 15 graduations, was it? Is that right?
And Evans, yours was like the first, wasn't it? Yours was at 8?
No, mine was actually I think they started earlier last week. Mine was 8 a.m. Saturday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think it was I would think it was like 11 of 15.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So how many people were in Lane Stadium when you graduated?
So for the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences, which covers like from criminology to Spanish to communications, In terms of graduates, so they had the podium and the stage in the end zone facing the student section. So there were rows of students up till about the 40-yard line towards the north end zone.
Right.
So not as many as I thought. Now,
So not even half full, is that what you're telling me?
not half
Okay.
full, but it's because nobody wanted to wake up at 6:30 in the morning. Guess who was late to getting his graduation tickets? That'd be one Evan Hughes.
Okay.
So everybody graduated at 1 o'clock for the most part. So I think there was more than half for the 1 o'clock ceremony. But you know what I like about that? We were done by 9:15. We're at Waffle House by 9:30 celebrating with a nice breakfast. So
Waffle House, that's
Yeah.
a free plug.
it was the only place that could fit people at 9:30 in the morning on graduation weekend. So.
Where's the Waffle House around here? There's one in Christiansburg?
No, in
No, it's
Blacksburg,
Blacksburg,
right
Main
by the Taco Bell and Moss Arts Center.
It's been there for a while now, and it's actually a popular late night destination.
No doubt.
So, anyways, a big congratulations to Malcolm, who gave you what you're wearing right now. You want to kind of explain what
Yes.
Malcolm did? Very, very cool, touching thing.
This was a new tradition to me. I didn't know about this, but it's called the Stole of Gratitude. So it is the graduates' stole, and they give it to the person whom they are most grateful for. What exactly, Malcolm? See, Malcolm doesn't have a microphone anymore, does he?
Does it work?
He's looking around trying to figure out how to turn his microphone on. So what does it stand for? You can just tell us and we'll repeat it.
So you can buy one or multiple, and you just give them to people that you have gratitude towards.
Oh, so it's a separate purchase. So do you have your own stole to keep, or is this the only one?
No, that's it.
Oh, good.
So you buy it and you give it to people that you're gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really cool, giving it to his dad. Love that.
So he handed it to me, and of course, I immediately cracked a joke that it was an $80,000 stole. So anyway, no, very, very nice moment. So I really appreciate that because it's been fun having Malcolm work on the podcast with us, and a lot of what you see he's responsible for as far as the audio, video, and editing setup. He did all that.
Yeah.
So we gotta train somebody else that knows how to do that stuff.
Real quick, Chris, I want to welcome you back to the United States. It's been a couple of weeks since we've seen you, and I know people enjoyed seeing your pictures on. You put a couple on Twitter, I want to say, maybe Facebook. So
Facebook.
I don't know where did you travel? Tell our listeners.
I went to St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. It was interesting. Landed, got on a cab/shuttle to go to where we were staying, and the woman behind me sees my Virginia Tech book bag and says, "Oh, go Hokies from Roanoke." Turned out she's a TSL Pass subscriber, right? Well, I thought it's so random because we have very few women subscribers.
She's a bit of a
Right.
unicorn.
She was down there with her husband, and he's like, "Yeah, I didn't go to Tech. I'm just along for the ride." So,
Wow.
so shout out to her, and actually didn't catch her name, but there's like I said, it's just you go on vacation to the Virgin Islands, and the last thing you expect is the first person you talk to down there to be a TSL.
To be a
Pass
female
subscriber.
TSL Pass subscriber.
There are very few of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good vacation though.
Oh man, yeah, great. One of the things you do down there is, and we did this a couple times, you get on a boat, they take you around to all these random islands and beaches and snorkeling spots. So you jump off the boat, you swim to the beach, you go to the beach bar if that's your thing, and then an hour or two later you swim back to the boat, go to the next island or beach or whatever.
So how many people are on one of these boats?
Oh, they were like normal sized boats you'd see on Smith Mountain Lake or something like
Right,
that. So,
right.
Anywhere from like 8 to 15, depending on how big.
So you pony
The
up some
boat is-
bucks and they take you out for the day?
Yeah, exactly.
Man, that sounds like
Yeah.
fun.
That sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah, so stuff like that. Yeah, good times. Then I came back and immediately caught a cold because it was between 82 and 86 degrees all the time down there. And then I got out of the car. It was actually in Venture getting back. I landed at midnight and drove around outside Charlotte for a while in an attempt to find gasoline. And I actually didn't know if I was going to make it back to Blacksburg or not.
Wow.
And after driving around for 30 miles to find a gas station that had gas, I finally got gas. Got back to Blacksburg at 3:30 a.m. on Wednesday, and it's 45 degrees. So that drastic temperature change, and I immediately caught a cold. It was I'm mostly over it now, but
Starting to get warm though in Blacksburg. It's gonna be like 70, 80 degrees for the next 10 days, which is great news.
Yeah, beautiful day today.
We'll dive into the show here in just a moment, but it's been a couple of weeks, so a couple of housekeeping notes. First off, if you're watching the podcast set, you might notice that there is a jersey that is being hung over Will's right shoulder. Stewart, 87. Will, you didn't tell me you played for Virginia Tech football. Tell me about your playing days. No, I'm kidding.
Don't let me forget that comment, though. That's actually kind of funny. So, yes, that jersey comes from a those of you that have been around a little bit and used to be beamerball.com subscribers, that jersey comes from a quote-unquote fantasy camp that Frank Beamer and his staff did back in the summer of 2004. So in the fall of so they were pushing this on beamerball.com at the time, and if I remember correctly, this camp was like $4,000. So it was pretty expensive. And my good friend Tom Beam, who posts as F4E Hokie on the boards, and I'm not giving anything away there. Everybody knows who Tom is. He's one of those people that puts his name out there. So Tom arranged this was in the fall of 2003, he arranged a fundraising campaign unbeknownst to me to raise the funds to send me to the fantasy camp. And so I believe that was presented to me the day that Tech beat Miami.
It was a tailgate. I was there.
Yeah.
2003 Miami game. Yep. And
So-
it was for the next summer.
So a great day. Yeah. So it was for the next summer. And so to put this in context, that was back when Tech Sideline did not have media access and was, as a matter of fact, was treated often with belligerence by the Virginia Tech athletic department. So to pony up $4,000 for me to spend the weekend with Frank and his coaches was, kind of interesting, kind of cool. To be fair, the football program was, as far as I know, was always okay.
The
with us.
football program had no problem with us.
Yeah.
They would let us into recruiting camps and things like that in the summer. Like, we could get into recruiting camps, which were run by the staff, but the administration itself would not let Tech Sideline in. Yeah.
And there are stories there, and one that comes to mind in particular that I don't have time to tell right now. So anyway, so we go to this. So the whole idea behind this fantasy camp was it took a weekend. We showed up on Friday and we left on Sunday, and it was supposed to kind of emulate a game weekend for the players. So you would have the team dinner on Friday night. You'd get up on Saturday, and I believe it was, we had breakfast Saturday morning. And I think we had position meetings with the coaches. And then they had us all like fully decked out in a complete uniform. And there wound up being, if I remember correctly, 31 of us. So not a lot of guys, but not just a handful. And so to see guys of, how do I put this, guys of all walks of life dressed up in Virginia Tech football gear. And so they did the whole deal of, once they got us in full uniform, they announced us running out of the tunnel and filmed it. And as I made mention to earlier, if you see me with a football helmet on, it looks like an orange on a toothpick. It's pretty hilarious. But the story behind the jersey is that they asked everybody ahead of time, what jersey number do you want? And I graduated in 1987, so I said, I want 87. So when I showed up, I was the only person that they'd had a snafu, and they didn't have a jersey for me. So they went and got, David Clowney was wearing number 87 at the time. They went and got David Clowney's jersey, ripped his name off of it, very quickly put my name on the back for the weekend. So I wore David Clowney's jersey that weekend when we got all dressed up in full gear. Before I left, of course, they had to take the jersey back. Everybody else got to take their jerseys and their helmets with them. They took the jersey back from me, but they tossed me, and I meant to have it here. Maybe we can bring it in after the break. They tossed me a number 5 jersey and said, here, take this with you. And so I took that out of there with me. And then later they did circle around and get me an 87 jersey, excuse me, with my name on it and mailed it to me. So I wound up with 2 jerseys, the 87 and the 5. Now here's what's interesting about the 5. Remember, this was the summer of 2004. Someone who was going to wear number 5 in the 2004 season was kicked off the team.
Or suspended.
Yes, for a year. So I have what was supposed to be Marcus Vick's jersey for the 2004 football season in my possession. Doesn't have his name on it, but that was that jersey's destiny that they tossed to me on the way out that day. So fortunately, another person who has been a much better representative of Virginia Tech and a much more successful football player later wore number 5. So you could look at it as a Tyrod Taylor jersey. So
You've got an interesting collection of jerseys. I've got the Jim Druckenmiller jersey that you sold me.
that's correct.
I've also got a basketball jersey that during Seth Greenberg's first year at Virginia Tech, there was a game at Pittsburgh which wasn't even televised, so nobody's ever actually seen these jerseys. It was the first time ever that Virginia Tech basketball wore black jerseys. Probably the first time any Virginia Tech team has ever worn black jerseys. And I've got Xavier Dowdell's jersey from that game.
Very cool.
That he wore during that game. Yeah.
And the first jersey I ever owned was a Greg Boone number 8 Tech T-shirt jersey. Because I loved Greg Boone growing up. Boone. It was a T-shirt, again, just an 8, like just a.
I don't know if you can still find Greg Boone's high school film somewhere, but you ought to watch it. He is a man among boys in his high school film. It's nuts to watch.
A dream guest. I would love to have Greg Boone on the podcast someday.
So I have one other jersey. I have an Al Clark jersey from, I believe, 1995, a white Big East Road jersey. I follow Al on Twitter, so I think I'm going to hit him up and ask him if he wants it. Now, the story with the Al Clark jersey is that when Malcolm played 1 year of football in 3rd grade, that was his practice jersey. He wore the Al Clark jersey. Remember that, Malcolm? Malcolm's like, no, I blotted that experience
What's
from
interesting,
my
my
memory.
Jim Druckenmiller jersey is like a dress. Like it comes down to my knees.
Yeah, because and so this jersey is very long, so that they come in very long with, kind of regular sleeves on them, and then the players have them cut like they want them. They take a lot of the tail off. A lot of the skill position players will have the sleeves cut way down to the shoulder pads so they don't restrict their movement. So that's what he's talking about. He's got a Druck jersey that is untouched.
I think we could do a full podcast on this over the
jerseys.
summer. We've got on jerseys and stories. We do have a lot to get into today here on episode 179 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. We'll talk a lot about Virginia Tech men's basketball, some additions and some changes to the staff for Coach Mike Young. We'll talk about a couple of players that are coming in, a couple that are going to the portal in football. We'll get to that in just a moment. But one more housekeeping note.
One more piece.
The Tech Sideline family and the staff is getting bigger with another full-time staff member, one of my best friends in the entire world. Chris, might be time to get a new title.
I know.
Managing editor's on the way out for Chris Coleman.
He's usurped it.
David Cunningham coming in full-time Tech Sideline later in the summer. You guys announced it last week. He will be the new managing editor. David has been instrumental in building the sports media and analytics program since the minute he stepped foot on campus. Editor-in-chief literally brought the idea to Bill and said, I want to do a website. Oversaw nearly 20 beat writers at 3304 Sports, edited every article, works behind the scenes at the ACC Network, sports director at WVT. Will, he does a little bit of everything, and I'm personally psyched for you guys, for David. I think this is a home run marriage, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, for those who are not familiar with the sports media and analytics program, Bill Roth returned from UCLA in 2016 and started the sports media and analytics program, which has since become a major in the School of Communications. I think that happened a year or two ago. So he started the SMA program. Were you in his first class?
That he ever taught?
No, in his first class of students. I think so, in 2016.
2016, I would have been a senior in high school. So he came back. He taught a little bit in 16. 17 was his first full year back.
Yeah, so guys like you and David Cunningham, I'm sure a bunch of other guys you could
You were one of his
name.
first recruits.
Yeah. Yes, David started. Did you and David co-found 3304 Sports? Is that accurate? I mean, whose idea was
He
that?
was a founding. I mean, Bill's always had the idea. I kind of helped Bill get it going, but David was a founding member, leadership right away from the start. He's been there every step of the way.
So David has run the website and, as you said, has managed a team of 15 or 20 writers and edited and posted all their content. And we need that here. So what's has happened at Tech Sideline is that the amount of content we produce requires a lot of scheduling and editing and media that goes with it and that sort of stuff. And that takes away from Chris's time to be an analyst and to really follow things closely and write stuff.
Yeah, there are some days where, during football season, where I might not even start on the game preview. I mean, maybe not even start research on the game preview until basically when the day we post it. right? Because I don't have time because I'm so busy editing everybody else's articles for the first 2 or 3
And
days.
people
of the
have
week.
noticed this. Like, for example, let's take the specific example of the game preview. People have noticed that they're not as detailed as they used to be.
Yeah.
You know, and so we knew that from a content standpoint, we needed somebody to take the load off of us. Chris, so he can produce better content in a more timely fashion. Me, so I can do the things necessary to run the business.
Yeah, and think about a newspaper. Let's say the editor of a newspaper was also in charge of writing most of the articles, right? So that was basically what I was doing. I was the editor of TSL and also had to write a large chunk of the content, right? And that's just not that's spread out too much. So
David will have that role for us.
David's going to manage our free content, and I'm going to manage our pay content, basically. So we still don't know what my title is going to be.
Now David doesn't want to hear any of that. He wants to talk about all the writing he's going to do, because we'll figure out later where the beat writing responsibilities will fall. David will be our football beat writer. He loves basketball. I know he loves covering basketball.
That's how when I first noticed David is he sat next to me during basketball games covering the team, and he always keeps these spreadsheets with these interesting stats.
Keeps track of every charge.
Like that.
He So anytime we needed to know how many charges Hunter Couture,
we can have a Hunter Couture charge meter on TSL this year. Because David keeps track of stuff like that.
Yeah, so he's just his appetite, his passion for Virginia Tech athletics and following it. He's a fantastic follow on Twitter
At the Real D Cunna.
The Real D Cunna, CUNNA. He's close to 5,000 followers. He started out at 4,500 when we announced it. And we're pushing people.
He'll
to follow.
jump up a bit when football starts, and and he's affiliated with us at that point. So he's the starting date. It's not going to be an overnight thing. The starting date is August 1st.
Right.
Though I guess we haven't had this conversation. Not you and me, or with him either, but it was announced yesterday that there will be in-person ACC Media Day, like July 21st or something like that.
All right, so David will be starting
David's
mid-July.
David doesn't know this yet, but there's a good possibility he's going to start a couple weeks earlier. But
See, that's exciting because he wasn't going to get paid till September 1st, and now if he starts in mid-July, he'll get paid on August 1st.
Congratulations, David.
But anyway, it's going to make us a whole lot better, and I know there's something that I'm forgetting to mention. Oh, so the other role David will serve is the relationship between us and the sports media and analytics program is getting tighter and tighter and tighter as time goes by. So having worked with so many students and managed them, David will also serve as the liaison between us and the program, so we can get more consistent coverage of, we've got pretty consistent coverage of football and basketball and recruiting. David will be able to manage student writers who will provide coverage of other sports. So we are going to get a lot better soon.
Love it. Jeff Holland, by the way, comments in, David Cunningham better redshirt. He needs to live in the weight room. Probably won't be game ready until his redshirt freshman year, August of 2022.
David's going to be one of the few true freshmen ready to play right away.
Right.
He's a 5-star.
He's going to need some more.
Darn right he's a 5-star.
Yeah.
Now, here's a funny little anecdote. So he did an update for his personal blog about graduating and how he's going to come work for us. And he sent the portion about how he's going to come work for us. And he said, if you told 8-year-old me that I was going to get to write about tech sports for a living, I would have fainted. And he spelled fainted FEINTED. So I had an uh-oh moment, like, uh-oh. But that's all right.
It turns out that was the only mistake in the entire article.
Yeah, I'm just kidding around with David. So he will need some breaking in as basically a true freshman for us, but he's going to have to be ready to play at the beginning of the season.
Pumped up for him. Again, you can follow David on Twitter at the Real D Cunna, CUNNA, and looking forward to having him a part of the Tech Sideline family later in the summer. This might be the latest we've ever gone without officially getting into what we're talking about, nearly a half hour in. But what the good news is? It's summertime. Malcolm and I don't have classes to worry about.
Right.
We've got all the time. I know you guys have stuff to do, but let's go ahead and transition into what we're going to be talking about today. Coming up a little bit later, we'll talk about football, DaShawn Crawford, and then the transfer portal. What does that mean for the defensive line depth? We'll talk softball, headed to the NCAA tournament this week. Baseball with a really big series against Notre Dame this weekend. Top 10 team in the country. New coach coming in lacrosse. John Sung resigned, and we'll talk about all that a little bit later. But we'll spend the majority of our day on the podcast today talking about changes on the bench for Coach Mike Young. We'll talk a lot about, as Chris wrote about, the Mike and Mike connection as Mike Jones has been pulled away from DeMatha High School, where he was one of the top high school coaches in the entire country, to now become the associate head coach at Virginia Tech. But I want to start off by talking about the impact that Chester Frazier had in 2 years at Virginia Tech. I believe, Chris, in your article, which I'm going to go off of, by the way, TechSideline.com, the Mike and Mike Connection, a great article from Chris that kind of goes in depth about what the hire means for Virginia Tech. But I believe you used the term, he was the yin and yang to Mike Young in terms of he was the defensive mind.
Chester Frazier.
Chester Frazier, that is. Mike Young's the offensive mind. When you look at what he was able to do in his short time in Blacksburg, what does he leave behind? What was he so good at that it'll be tough to replace?
He shouldered a big recruiting burden, but I think that's replaceable with Mike Jones's contacts and everything like that. You don't know if from an he's a good X's and O's coach. You've got to be to make it this far. He's got a great record at DeMatha, Team USA coach, everything like that.
He won 511 games at DeMatha from basically 2002, I think.
And a national championship. So, and you're talking, this is one of the top 5, it's high school, but you put the air quotes around high school. This is a basketball factory that kids transfer to get the best coaching possible. It's sort of like, the IMG Academy of Basketball, and IMG's got a good basketball program too. But they're known for football. But at any rate, it's one of the nation's top basketball programs. I think he's a great fit. I don't know if yes, he's a direct Chester Frazier replacement as he's now the number 2 man on the staff. He's associate head coach. He's going to have plenty of authority. I don't think he quite 100% replaces Frazier in the defensive coordinator role, so to speak, that I think Frazier basically what he served as, in my opinion. But you're never going to have like a 100% fit from a replacement standpoint. I think you lose a little bit defensively, but I actually think you gain a bit in recruiting, and it's not just the DMV, Virginia, Northern Virginia, Maryland, DC. He has been a Team USA coach for the last 20-some years.
For the under-16 team?
Various roles. He has been the under-16 head coach in the past. He was going to be the under-16 head coach again this year, but he is not going to do that now because he's taken the associate job.
But if you want to talk about immediate impact, he knows a lot of recruits that'll be...
and exactly. Recruits all over the country that he has coached. And it gives Virginia Tech immediate
access.
His relationship with Nike. Now let me talk about DeMatha here a little bit. And DeMatha is an Under Armour school, with the exception of the boys basketball program, which remained with Nike. And they remained with Nike because Mike Jones is a Team USA basketball coach, and Team USA is Nike. So that's almost like all of Virginia Tech sports being Under Armour, and then one of their programs staying with Nike. It just doesn't happen. But that's a unique relationship. So he's got such a great relationship with Nike, both at the Team USA level and the grassroots level, that, he can walk into pretty much any Nike AAU program and say, I'm associate head coach at Virginia Tech now. I've been developing Team USA basketball players for 20 years. And that's a big deal. Team USA, the best basketball in the world in the United States of America, and they trust Mike Jones with their player development for a lot of their young talent. So I just think it's a big deal on a lot of fronts.
Will, I believe Coach Young told, it was Mark Berman of the Roanoke Times, that this was something that was kind of out of left field, this hire. When you read the credentials that he has, is this a hire that you think fits? What were your initial impressions when you saw the news?
I feel like we're flying really close to the sun here. This is this is pretty cool. You never know how things are going to work out. But on paper, it looks like a fantastic hire. Mike Young may be possibly underselling himself a little bit by saying it came out of left field. Mike is a fox. He seems to be one step ahead.
He's crafty.
You're crafty, and I suppose he's a good-looking guy too. I didn't mean it that way. So I said this on the board several times in the last couple of days. I've just learned not to underestimate Mike Young. So yeah, Chester Frazier leaving was a big worry. And as Chris said, this isn't a direct one-for-one plug-in. It's some things are better about Mike Jones, some things are better about Chester Frazier. But this looks like a really, really good hire, and I think the impact on recruiting should be immediate. Mm-hmm. Now so Mike Jones gives you access to these kids. You still have to have the ability to close on them, and that's a whole separate animal.
Right.
That I think we know Chester Frazier could close. This is new territory for Mike Jones. He's recruited of a sort at DeMatha.
Yeah, he's recruited high school players to the best high school in the country,
where there are no rules,
where there are no recruiting rules. There's no
oversight from
some governing body. Yeah, right. And basically, you're not recruiting against Paul VI for players anymore, right? You're recruiting against Louisville,
Kentucky,
and
Yeah.
So it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more of a grind, but he knows that because he's
seen it from the high school coaching side. He's seen college coaches grind.
No doubt. And I want to point out that ever since Whit Babcock took over, the monetary investment in the basketball program has been really, really good. I mean, the resources he gave Buzz Williams is just uncomparable to any past Virginia Tech basketball coach, the support he received. I looked up Chester Frazier's salary this morning, and, he was making $320,000 as Virginia Tech's associate head coach. And Jason Williford is UVA's associate head coach. And I didn't see any up-to-date numbers for this year for Williford, but last year he was making $280,000. And UVA is one of the biggest and best supported basketball programs in the country, and Virginia Tech is matching them in some ways in terms of financial support for the program, which means you can go out and make a big-time hire like this. You have the financial resources to do so. And I saw some criticism of Justin Fuente and his assistant coach hiring and things like that. Well, when Justin Fuente was talking to Lauren Johnson, the former Virginia Tech player and Highland Springs head coach, about a coaching job at Virginia Tech, he didn't have the financial resources to make Lauren Johnson an offer he couldn't refuse. But Mike Young had the financial resources to do it. So you're going to see that change with Virginia Tech football going forward. I'm just using it as it's not an apples to apples comparison across the two. But I think the success Virginia Tech men's basketball has had over the last 5 years or so is partially a direct result of it being better funded than it used to be in the past.
Yeah. So hold that thought for a second, Evan. Now there is if you want to call it, downside to providing better funding for the program. So every year we do a financial report on Virginia Tech Athletics. We've been doing it, I don't know, since the early 2000s. Randy Jones puts it together for us. So as we talk, I'm looking at a chart that shows revenue and expenses for men's basketball. Mm-hmm. And during Jim Weaver's tenure, revenue for men's basketball went from about $5.8 million up to, if I've got my years correct here, $5.8 million to $10.7 million. Mm-hmm. And the profitability of the men's basketball program went from $3 million to $5 million.
Yes.
So in Jim Weaver's last year, 2012, 2013, Virginia Tech men's basketball brought in $10.7 million and made in profit $5.2 million.
Yeah. It's what happens when you pay James Johnson, your head coach, $600,000 a year.
Right.
And then you finish dead last in the ACC. But hey, you're the most profitable program.
Right. And so then it's like, if you're looking at this graphic from the time Whit Babcock was hired, it's like a gate got dropped. And so now revenue dipped because Johnson had run the program into the ground. Right. So it dropped down to like $8 million shortly after that. Ticket sales plummeted, all that. And Whit spent big money on buzz. Mm-hmm. Right. So since then, the revenue for men's basketball has gotten up into the $11 or $12 million range, but the profitability is now, air quotes, only a couple million a year versus $5 million a year. But, yes, Whit has put a lot of money into the program.
But we're winning more games, and I'm not willing to sacrifice that extra $3 million of profits for winning 11 games a year, which we were doing before Buzz got here.
Yeah, because all these Spurtle sales from Lucinda are easily going to make up the extra money.
I know. But again, this is one of the reasons they're redoing Castle. it's a one-time cost, which hopefully will get paid for 100% or close to 100% through donations, through private donations. So it doesn't come out of the bottom line, but you're going to have suites and club seats and things like that. And then just like that, your revenue in basketball is going to grow up dramatically simply because you've got more high-level seats.
So they don't have exact figures, but they want to raise $50 million from donors for the castle expansion, and they think it will cost in the neighborhood of $75 million.
Right.
And that extra $25 million
will come in the form of a loan.
Yeah, hopefully a very, very low interest loan from the school, and it will be funded by suites and things like that. So we interrupted you.
That's really great perspective. And I was just going to add, because I think for the outsider who hears Hokies are hiring a high school coach to be the associate head coach, let me just give you a couple of numbers real quick. This is not just hiring a public school coach, right, to come in as your associate head coach. Somebody who's coached 5 current NBA players, including the #1 overall pick in the NBA draft in 2017, Markelle Fultz, coached Jeff Allen in high school. How about that? I love that stat.
Jeff Allen played for all the basketball factories, man. He played for DeMatha, then he played for Oak Hill, then he played for Hargrave. Jeff Allen made the transfer portal before the transfer portal existed.
But also coached Jeri Grant, Jaron Grant, Michael Hopkins. I mean, a bunch of really great players. And I mean, you put in your article, Chris, but DeMatha High School, for someone who knows nothing about high school basketball, put into perspective how good they are on a national level.
They're so good that when you say high school, you should use high school with air quotes. I mean, you cannot think of basketball recruiting in like football recruiting. And I know Tech fans have a tendency to do that because they're football centric, but it is not the same thing. It is apples and oranges. And these basketball factories like this, it's not like you go into Salem High School in Virginia Beach, which is a regular high school. DeMatha is a place where parents send their kids. It's a private school in the DC Catholic League, which is a really, really good league. Like Eric Green played in the same league. He's from Winchester, but he played for Paul VI in Northern Virginia as a senior to go up to get better coaching and go up against the best possible competition to prepare himself, get more offers, things like that. And that's what DeMatha is, except on a higher level, of course. That they can attract players. It's not just, I grew up 10 minutes from Hyattsville, Maryland, so I go to DeMatha. That's not the way it is. This is a basketball factory. It's not a prep school, but it's kind of like that. So you can't compare it to football recruiting. I mean, there is no Mike Jones of high school football unless IMG Academy was located in Northern Virginia. Right? Which it's not. Yep. So there is no comparable football hire. Like if Virginia Tech had hired Lauren Johnson as a cornerbacks coach or something like that, Highland Springs is one of the best programs in the state of Virginia. DeMatha is one of the best programs in the entire country.
Right.
So you got DeMatha, you got Montverde down in Florida where Justin Bibbs played. You got Oak Hill, of course, and a couple others here and there, but. So it's an apples to oranges comparison.
Again, you mentioned his credentials, Team USA under-16 head coach for many years. And then, Will, I mean, you think about the immediate impact of this. This is in Chris's article, but DeMatha has 2 players ranked in the top 100 for the upcoming 2022 class. Small forward Tyrell Ward, the number 53 players in the 247 composite rankings, is 1, and just received a Crystal Ball 2.
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech. So it does feel like, I mean, he's going to know all of the talent right now that's there. Do you think we'll see a boost in recruiting in the next year to 3 years just because he knows all the players that are currently in the high school ranks right now?
I think so. Here's what I think. I think it will improve access to some better players. This is not anything anybody's told me. This is just kind of my own thoughts. I think Mike Jones is Mike Young, and we're going to do that a lot. Chris and I have already talked about how we're going to.
Basketball, you got the Mikes, and football, you got the Justins.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
So, excuse me for mixing up. I think Mike Young is a very good basketball coach. He's had a couple seasons in the ACC now, he's smart, and I think what he's trying to do is. I really liked the players he had on team this past year, the way they ran the offense, the way they worked together, all that stuff. But you can always, if you can get that same thing with bigger, faster, more physically talented guys, if you can get the culture and the buy-in with players who are just bigger, better, and faster.
What Tony Bennett was eventually able to accomplish at UVA.
Yes.
Took him 5 or 6 years.
Yes. Now, some of the guys that won the national championship for Tony Bennett, they weren't just system players. They were guys in the NBA. What a
Kyle Guy missed a dunk the other night.
Is Ty Jerome in the NBA?
Impressive.
He is.
Yeah.
He is.
And who am I leaving out?
Hunter.
Jakite? Mamadi?
Deani.
He's not, but DeAndre Hunter is.
DeAndre Hunter. That's
he
who
was
I'm
a top
trying
10
to think
pick
of.
a couple of years ago.
So there were, he had NBA players on his team when he won a national championship. And Mike Young can have a very successful program here at Virginia Tech, but he knows that to really start, having a legit shot to make the Final Four and win a national championship, he needs players that are just physically more impressive. And that's not a knock on the guys he's currently got on his team.
Yeah, and there's one point I want to make here, and I know because of how long Frank Beamer and Bud Foster and Billy Hyde and Jim Cavanaugh stayed at Virginia Tech that, Tech fans want coaches that are going to be long-term and stay for years and years and years. This is not what this hire is. This is very much – this reminds me very much of Kevin Keats. Kevin Keats was the longtime head coach at Hargrave and decided he needed a new challenge. And he wanted to be a head coach at the college level. But to be a head coach at the college level, he first had to take an assistant coaching job at the college level. So he went from Hargrave to being Rick Pitino's assistant at Louisville. And after 3 years as Rick Pitino's assistant, he got the UNC Wilmington head coaching job, and then got the NC State head coaching job. I think this is similar for Mike Jones. I think he's interested in a new challenge in coaching. I think he is very capable of being a head coach at the college level. I think, he went to ODU. Whenever Jeff Jones retires at ODU, which will probably be sooner rather than later, then he would be a great hire for Old Dominion.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is going to last longer than 2 or 3 years.
And it wouldn't surprise me if Kevin Keats and Mike Jones hadn't talked about this.
Sure. So I think it's a great opportunity for both parties.
That's a great point. He played at Old Dominion, Mike Jones, so that could be a potential.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if Mike Rhodes left VCU, he could. Honestly, a lot of these CAA A10 programs, if he recruits well at Virginia Tech and gains college coaching experience in an assistant role, combined with his contacts with Nike and everything like that, then he becomes a very attractive candidate for one of those mid-major schools as a head coach, similar to Kevin Keats. The situation are so similar. So, Look, this isn't a Bud Foster, in 20 years he's still going to be here or something like that. This, in my opinion, is a short-term thing, which is what in college basketball most assistant coaching hires are.
And there's an understandable fear reaction when you lose a good assistant. Because assistants are very important.
Right.
And if you don't replace them properly, it's a problem. Your program's going to.
I was worried when Tech lost Chester Frazier.
Yeah.
But I always knew they were going to lose Chester Frazier. Right. I've been writing that since the day he was hired. This guy's not.
And I think Coach Young has
long.
even said at some points he's going to be a great head coach one day, which he's going back to his alma mater. But he's close to getting that head coach.
Oh, he's already been offered at least one that he turned down that I know of.
And in the interim, he's doubling his salary while he waits for that head coaching job to come along.
Now, the staff and change is not quite done yet with Virginia Tech men's basketball. So Mike Jones is in, Chester Frazier at Illinois, but it was reported on Tuesday that Christian Webster is in talks to join the staff at Florida. Now, Webster was here under Coach Buzz Williams. Coach Young kept him, so he's been in Blacksburg the last couple of years. Nothing finalized, but Chris, do you think that is a move that could happen, and what do you think happens if another spot on the bench opens up?
I think it's a strong possibility that it happens. I actually heard about that when I was down in the Virgin Islands, that he was talking to Florida and some other schools too. And it's not a reflection on Webster. I think you see assistant coaches move on a lot. He's been here 4 or 5 years. He's worked under Buzz Williams. He's worked under Mike Young, and he's still a young coach, and I'm sure has aspirations maybe of being a head coach one day. And if you have those aspirations, you need to change jobs a decent amount, work for a large number of head coaches, learn more stuff, learn more philosophies. It makes your resume stronger and gives you a better chance of being a head coach one day. So I'm not surprised by it, and that's just the way it is with young assistants. They move on a lot. I'm not worried about it. If he stays, great. If he moves on, fine. I'd be more interested to see how Mike Young replaces him. He like right now, he's a Mid-Atlantic guy in terms of recruiting. Mike Jones is also a Mid-Atlantic guy, Northern Virginia, Maryland, D.C. So Virginia Tech has kind of doubled up in that area with 2/3 of their assistants. Their specialty is in that area. So if Webster were to leave, would Mike Young add maybe a guy with Carolina, Georgia, Florida connections to maybe expand the recruiting reach a little bit? Or would he double up in the same region? I'd be strongly tempted to do that, to be quite honest with you, to double up. But that, to me, that's if Webster were to leave, how Mike Young would approach that hire. Or do you try to find a defensive specialist like Chester Frazier to a certain extent? I don't know. I think I would probably double up on the Mid-Atlantic region and try to be as strong in that area as possible.
So in the meantime, do we need to install a vacuum tube between Blacksburg and Gainesville? What's up with that?
Well, speaking of Gainesville, let's transition to talking about changes to the coaching staff, to changes to the roster, where Virginia Tech on Tuesday announced that Lynn Kidd will transfer from Clemson to Virginia Tech. He is from Gainesville, Florida.
He sure is. Originally from Gainesville, Florida.
Nice segue. Totally unintentional.
That's perfect.
Lynn Kidd, the newest member of Virginia Tech men's basketball, 6'10", 235-pound post player. Originally the number 110 recruit nationally coming out of high school, according to the 247 composite rankings. He played at IMG Academy. He chose Clemson over Alabama, Miami, Auburn, Florida, Georgia Tech, and others. He was listed with an offer from Virginia Tech out of high school. So he went to Clemson this past year. He played a total of 7 games as a true freshman, but as Chris Coleman always likes, gets that extra year of eligibility back.
He's actually a prime candidate for a red shirt because he's extremely raw on the defensive end. And he's another guy where football recruiting, basketball recruiting, apples and oranges. He reclassified. He was originally a class of 2021 recruit, which means he would be an incoming freshman this year. Right? He got a Clemson offer in, I think, late July and committed to them and immediately reclassified to 2020 and enrolled a couple of weeks later. So he basically skipped his senior season, he could have played one more season in high school and enrolled at Clemson instead. Yeah. So you're getting a guy who is still a very, very, very young player, who was still a true freshman, very raw with a very high upside, in my opinion. It seems like he's a very polished offensive player from what I understand, but he's actually behind. All freshmen are behind defensively. He's more behind than most players defensively. So, and the reason he didn't play much for Clemson this past year, Brad Brownell is a defensive-minded coach. You better play defense or you're not getting on the court for Brad Brownell. So he was behind from that standpoint. And so if he can refine his defensive skills and everything like that, he's got the ability offensively, is what it sounds like. He could play the 4 or the 5 potentially for Virginia Tech, depending on who the other big man on the court is.
It's so funny, a 6'10", 235-pound 4.
Yeah.
You know?
I think I don't think he's going to play much this year. I don't think he is. You've got right now, let's say they don't add any other players, but right now you got 2 guys. Well, let's assume Aluma comes back. You've got Aluma and Ojiako who can play center. You've got Mutz and Gassan who can play the 4, and even Gassan can play the 5 a little bit if he needed to, depending on matchups. I don't see room for him getting on the court this year, especially if he's behind defensively, which, in my opinion, the fact that he's only going to be a true freshman and he had reclassified, he was supposed to be a true freshman this year anyway, right?
That's right.
And with that kind of post depth, I would try my hardest to redshirt him if he was open to it.
Now, in basketball, how do the redshirt rules work? If you play at all, you can't redshirt? Because in football, it's like 25% of the games under normal.
It even used to be that way in basketball. You could play like 5 games and still redshirt, and maybe say you were hurt or something like that. But there was a grace period in basketball. Honestly, don't know what the rules are.
Yeah.
No.
So one name you just heard Chris mention all of the depth inside. Did not bring up Michael Durr's name because since the last podcast that we've done, of course, we talked about Michael Durr coming in, the transfer from South Florida, 6'11", was going to be a big presence inside. He's entered the transfer portal. I believe he just committed to Indiana.
Yes,
he did.
Yep.
And Will, I believe that was in large part because of Chester Frazier leaving. Is that correct?
Yeah, that I don't know. I know I haven't been told that directly. Have you been?
I have not been told that directly,
We just
but
assumed.
I mean, it basically happened within a day or
The
two
same
of each
time,
other.
yeah.
So I don't. You can certainly make that connection.
So Michael Durr becomes the answer to a trivia question.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
It would have been fun to have seen Durr with Aluma. I mean, all that size. That would have been interesting.
But at the same time, like, I don't know, man, it's tough on these kids this year. Like, you hit the transfer portal and you want to find a place as quickly as possible before spots fill up at other schools, but you aren't allowed to visit. Like that guy committed to Virginia Tech and never set foot on campus.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like it never happened.
Yeah. No, really. Yeah.
It will be the answer to a great trivia question, right there.
5 years from now.
Like,
well done.
I'm gonna feel bad for some of these guys this year that have made a commitment. You know, especially like the transfers who have like 1 year left to play, right? And they had to commit somewhere that they've never seen. Like, what if they get there and they're like, "Man, I don't like this place. I just don't like it." Well, they're stuck, of course,
yeah.
and it's not really fair to them because they were never given the opportunity to visit.
Yep.
You know, tough.
There you go. Well, speaking of transfers and those who have 1 year of eligibility left, we're going to keep talking about that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, DaShawn Crawford entered the transfer portal for Virginia Tech. We'll talk about the depth of the defensive line, and then we'll go rapid fire with softball, baseball, lacrosse, get to your questions, all that and more coming up. Episode 179 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, presented by the Southeast Regional Training Center. Back in just a moment. Welcome back into episode 179 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Great to have you with us as we record on Wednesday morning, May 19th at around 11 a.m. Evan Hughes alongside Chris Coleman, Will Stewart behind the scenes, Malcolm Stewart. We're going to get to your questions. If you're watching on YouTube at the end of the show, be sure to drop them in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, even if you are watching archived. It greatly helps us. Our first show in just about a month. It's great to be back. We're having a ball. We had a great story time with Will earlier in the show talking about his Will Stewart jersey that's hanging to his right on the podcast set. And he talked about a jersey that would have been worn by Marcus Vick. Instead, it's in the possession of Will Stewart on Wednesday morning, May 19th, 2021. For those that are listening, go ahead and describe what you're holding there, Will.
So I am holding a number 5 jersey, which would have been for the 2004 season. I remember these were brand new jerseys in 2004.
This was a new style of. Remember, it was all maroon with hardly any piping before 2004. That was the first year of that style jersey where the orange. You don't want to call them stripes, but the piping comes down the chest like that. Yeah,
and there's a little bit of white piping
I think they're
there.
great jerseys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I get the traditionalists who love the solid maroon 2003.
Which actually that is my favorite, but that's my second favorite.
Yeah.
I think that's a good look, and that's the shortened sleeves version as opposed to the.
So this had come in, and since it was going to be a quarterback's jersey, the sleeves these represent sleeves that are really cut off. If you compare them to the jersey behind me, these sleeves are not cut off. So
we should do a special podcast where we all wear our favorite VT jerseys.
And invite Clark Rulin in.
And invite Clark Rulin in. Clark
sadly
DM'd me during the break and talking about I have Zabian Dowdell's black jersey from that game, and he's got Chris Tucker's black jersey from that game.
I'm going to go ahead and say I think Clark Rulin probably has a ton of jerseys.
Yeah.
I would love – that'd be a great podcast. Talk about Clark's man cave.
Clark's got some swag.
Yeah.
Man.
Maybe we should do a TSL podcast on the road.
Yeah, how about we go
on the road to Clark Rulin's. Clark,
we
we're
are
coming
inviting
to your house.
ourselves to your house. We would
Yes.
love to do a podcast in your basement or anyways. It's really cool. I love seeing the pictures of it. So
Yeah. So anyway,
right.
make me an offer on the Marcus Vick jersey.
All right, we're going to go rapid fire here over the next 10 minutes. We are going to talk about 4 different sports, and then we'll get to your questions on YouTube. All right, let's go ahead and start. It's 10:59, so we're going to try to be done by 11:09. 10 minutes on the clock. Here we go. Let's start with Virginia Tech football. Last week, DaShawn Crawford entered the transfer portal. The senior who transferred into Virginia Tech from a JUCO in 2019 had a decent 2019 season, hardly played in 2020, Chris, I'll start with you. Were you surprised by the move?
Not really. I think he's a perfect example of how there's such a small margin of error in college football. Like, he's a really, really, really good natural football player. He was the state defensive player of the year in Mississippi as a senior in high school. I mean, this guy can play football, but he's undersized, and to have success at the Power 5 level, he needed to be in a specific scheme. And the Virginia Tech scheme under Bud Foster and Charlie Wiles was the perfect scheme for him. Maybe the only perfect scheme for him at this level of football these days, you know? So when Foster retired and Virginia Tech got new philosophies on the defensive line, and he's not a fit for it anymore. And he was, and combine that with his knee injury, and I don't know what his knee injury was, if it was just a really, really bad sprain or if there was some kind of structural damage. My guessing is it was more than a sprain. Yeah. Combine that, which probably took away a little bit of his quickness, and he's not a fit for the scheme. He dropped down the depth chart this spring.
Yeah, he would have been very situational.
Yeah, he's not going to play in the NFL. There's no chance he ever plays a down in the NFL. So he's got 1 year left in his life to play football, and he wants to play football, not watch football from the sideline. So there you go. I don't blame him. I think he was a really good player for Tech, but I think 10 or 15 years ago he would have had a standout career at Tech. I think he was a great fit for the scheme. Sometimes life is about timing.
Yep. You think about some of the size on the defensive line. I mean, Jordan Williams is 310 pounds, 6'4". You think about Josh Fuga, 6'2", 323 pounds as a redshirt freshman. Jaden Cunningham's 306 pounds, 6'2" as a redshirt junior.
Yeah, you mentioned
much more size.
You mentioned Cunningham, and he was a JUCO recruit who signed the same year as DaShawn Crawford. And when they signed together, I'm like, oh, great signing DaShawn Crawford. He's a great fit for this scheme. I like the Cunningham, but I don't know what kind of a fit he is for the scheme. And now here we are a couple years later, and it's like the direct opposite. Yep. Yeah, because the scheme changed.
Let's transition from football to talking about Virginia Tech softball. Will, Hokies losing the ACC semifinals to Clemson. They go on to lose to Duke in the ACC championship. I know it was a little disappointing for the Hokies, but they still finish ranked in the top 20 at the end of the regular season. And I think they find themselves in a really interesting and winnable region in Tempe, going to play Arizona State, who is the 15 overall team.
Out of 16.
Out of 16, correct. So they are barely a 1 seed. Hokies are a high 2 seed. I really like their chances against BYU, Southern Illinois, and Arizona State. I think this is going to be a really interesting regional that begins on Thursday.
Well, I like their chances anytime they can. I don't know exactly how regionals are structured, but anytime they can pitch Keely Rochard in every game, and Pete Demore said this, they have a chance to beat anybody anytime Keely's pitching. Their defense has to be good. Their hitting has to be timely. There have been times where the hitting wasn't timely, or they make a defensive mistake here or there. But they are a team with enough offensive acumen that if they play good defense and Keely Rochard's pitching, they can beat anybody.
Yeah, the thing right now with Tech softball, actually, they were hitting the ball so well in February and March. A team that was hitting well over 300, now they're hitting below 300 over the last month or so. So you look at that Clemson game, they had runners in scoring position early. They couldn't convert. They lost 2-0. I actually think I'm not worried about the pitching. If the hitting can produce like they were earlier in the year, I really think they're going to win that regional.
They're the favorites for that regional if the hitting goes back to March, April level.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. 100%. So
now, are they missing any players right now, or is everybody back?
To my understanding, everybody is back. Everybody's healthy and good to go. So I think that they open with BYU. BYU's actually played Arizona State a lot in this season, which is ironic that they're going to play each other again in a regional. Arizona State, a winning record. I believe they took a series maybe against Oregon. That was their only notable series win of the year.
So Tech has an advantage when it comes to level of competition faced throughout the
season. I think so. I mean, the Pac-12 is good, but I think that Arizona State, to me, beat everybody they should have. They took one series that was kind of an upset. I think that you look at Clemson, for instance, right, who had the ACC Freshman and Player of the Year in Valerie Cagle. They are a 2 seed in the Alabama regional, which Alabama is one of the best teams in the country. Like, I think Tech got a really great draw when it comes to the regional they're playing in. No SEC teams. Now, if they win that regional, they're likely going to play the number 2 team in the country in Los Angeles in a super regional in UCLA.
Well, that's a good problem to have.
So, anyways, that'll be a fun
So fill me in on the format. How many teams get invited? 64?
So I believe it's 64. There's 4 teams.
16 times 4, yeah.
Right.
4 teams in every regional. So the one seed. So if you're a top 8 seed and you win your regional, then you're guaranteed to host a super regional.
Okay.
So it's double elimination in a regional. And then if you get out of a regional, you go to a super, which is a best of 3.
You and one other team, best
team.
of 3.
So for instance, if Tech won their regional, UCLA won their regional, best of 3, Hokies against UCLA.
And that narrows it down to 8 teams, and then the 8 that come out of there go to the...
Well, 8 teams make the Women's College World Series, so it would actually be... I'm sorry,
the super regionals take it from 16 to 8.
Correct.
Then the 8, they go to the World Series, and is that double elimination?
I believe, I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure, because Tech lost 2 games in 2008 when they made the Women's College World Series, so I believe that's double elimination, just like the regionals and technically the supers are. You can't lose twice.
That's true.
So anyways, I really think, Keeley has still been pitching really well. Defense has been pretty strong the last couple of weeks. The Hokies did avenge their loss to Notre Dame. They beat them in the quarterfinals of the ACC tournament.
They were due.
I'm pretty, folks, if you want to watch some Tech softball, Thursday night at 7 on ESPN3. They're the only regional to start play on Thursday because BYU has a
doesn't play on Sunday.
They can't play on Sunday.
Yeah.
So the regional championship will be Saturday night. So anyways, look out for Tech softball. Pete DeMoore's had him in the NCAA tournament every year since he took over in 2019.
Busy week for Pete DeMoore.
Yeah, did you see that?
Too. Yeah, how about
just
that?
had his first kid.
And if they had actually beaten Clemson, he wouldn't have been there for his child's birth, right? Because he would have been coaching in the championship game. Yeah.
Something good from something bad. Right? We're glad he was there for that. Very happy for Coach DeMoore and his wife Anna. Let's transition to talk about baseball momentarily. Chris, about a month ago, it was looking like Virginia Tech was in position to win the ACC Coastal.
Yeah.
Now the Hokies 16-17 in the ACC, and it feels like this is a really important series coming up against Notre Dame, a top 10 team in the country, the best team in the ACC. They have not lost a ACC series all year.
Well, they're due to lose one.
There you go. The law of averages, right, Chris?
Yeah.
How important is this series coming up for Tech?
I think it's pretty important. I haven't looked at any bracket projections. I do know the one I heard yesterday when I was on the Paul Van Wagoner radio show was that Tech is still projected to be in the field. They've played a tough schedule. It's the ACC. They have tailed off recently. Hitting hasn't been as good. For the most part, got 1 or 2 guys who are heating up, but some of your freshmen are cooling off, and it's kind of what I was worried about. Like the scouting report is now out on all those freshmen, right? Pitchers, pitching coaches, they know their tendencies now because there's now a large. You got a lot of data to draw from now, as opposed to the beginning of the season where there wasn't enough tape out there to get a good read on tendencies and whether the guys chase outside fastballs or whatever, things like that. But all that information is there now, and now it's just like rookies in baseball. A lot of them start out hot because there's no scouting report on them, and then the pitchers figure them out, and then it's up to the rookies to make the adjustments to the adjustments, right? And I think that's a little bit where Tech is at right now.
The good news and a positive is that the weekend rotation is back intact. This coming weekend will be its second weekend that Chris Gerard is back with Anthony Simonelli, who's pitching really well, and Peyton Alford.
And how many total weekends has Virginia Tech's starting pitching staff actually been together?
I can tell you right now, in terms of the ACC, North Carolina, Wake Forest, Duke last week, and then Notre Dame. In terms of all 3 being healthy all at once. Which is huge.
It's just 4? Wow.
Just 4. And Chris Gerard last weekend against Duke was pitching he went into the 9th inning. And Hokies were up 1-0. So he's back.
He's definitely back. Like, it wasn't one of those things where, let's ease him back into it with 60 pitches, right? No, it wasn't like that. Simonelli pitched great. Yeah, that was a disappointing series because Virginia Tech led all 3 of those games in the 8th inning, right?
Yeah.
So baseball is such a sport where it's like a fine margin of error, man. Like Tech could have easily swept that series, and they got swept.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you play so many games in baseball that all that comes back around. Tech has won a lot of games this year that they easily could have lost. They've come from behind a lot. And at the end of the year, you are who your record says you are. I think it all balances out. I know that's a cliche. But I do
the
think
law of averages.
Some sports is much more true than.
Yeah, it is.
So, again, that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Tech against Notre Dame. And that'll complete the regular season. ACC tournament is next weekend, which I just saw was announced full capacity.
Yes.
The ACC baseball tournament.
Where is it? Down in North Carolina?
It's
I guess
at
Durham Bulls Park.
I heard John Laser say this. It's the nicest minor league ballpark, in his opinion.
I've ridden by it, and it's beautiful from the interstate down there, the Durham Bulls Park. It's not the old Durham Bulls Park, like fat back from the Bull Durham movie.
Yeah.
It's that park does still exist, but that was Durham Bulls are AAA now, so they're in a much bigger, nicer stadium. They're not in the bus leagues anymore.
Did you ever see the ballpark Salem used to play in? Salem Red Sox?
No.
Yeah, it's kind of like that park in Bull Durham.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that's in Charlotte, and again at the Bull.
I've been to a game in that old park in Bull Durham, actually.
Yeah.
Been to a minor league game.
Okay, last piece of last thing. Virginia Tech lacrosse looking for a new head coach. John Sung resigned, and in my opinion, will go down as the best coach in program history. You look at what he accomplished. Virginia Tech lacrosse, to give a little bit of back, had never really had success.
What, have they
since
won like 2 or 3 games ever in the ACC? Something like that?
And then in his second year, took him to their first ever NCAA tournament.
And I know the end of his tenure, it kind of petered out.
I think they went 1-8 in the ACC this year.
Which was they had a lot of seniors this year, but they had a huge COVID pause, if you remember.
They did.
From February to March, in which they had, it was a rough. They were putting defenders on the attackers.
Yes, that was the infamous time where the basketball program was also down, and several other Tech programs were down.
There was a big party.
There was a party.
and
plenty of athletes were there. It does take a genius to figure that out, but So I think probably if you consider the way his tenure started, the ending was a disappointment. But when you look at it as a whole, the program he took over was the absolute worst in the ACC, not even a question. And so he did a great job. I don't know the circumstances surrounding his resignation or anything like that. But when you look back on a coach, I guess the ultimate judge is on his tenure is, did he leave us in a better position, or at least the same position as the one he took over? And he certainly left Virginia Tech a stronger program than the one he inherited.
Well, they were in the top 20, top 10 for a large portion of his career. They had first ever program wins against Syracuse, Notre Dame. He certainly raised the bar. I think it's an attractive job now. Honestly,
well, it's one of those sports where you can be really good, and because you're in the ACC, it just
that's true.
And soccer's kind of that way.
Yeah. And even the regional teams that aren't in the ACC around here, like JMU, winning the national championship, right?
Yeah.
So it's not even like you can schedule a non-conference game against JMU and be like, well, that'll be a win. Well, no, it might not be, right? Probably won't be even. And speaking of small teams winning national championships, you don't expect. How about Marshall winning the men's soccer national?
It was a great championship game too against Indiana,
and they knocked off UNC to get there. So, and I know this is the year of COVID and everything's thrown out of whack.
They
to
beat
a
some
certain
good
extent.
teams.
Yeah, but Virginia Tech's never won a national championship, right? You would think after so many years, like, you just get lucky at some point, right?
How about in women's soccer? Did you guys see Santa Clara beat Florida State on penalty kicks to win the women's national championship? They were an 11 seed.
Yeah.
So this year, your soccer national champions are Santa Clara and Marshall.
Love parity, man.
I do.
Yeah. So there we go. We went.
So let's not talk about college football anymore this show.
Yeah. We went 14 minutes, by the way. I'm looking at time. It's 11:13. So 14 minutes, but good conversation. And the best conversation has yet to happen on this podcast because we have not gotten to your questions yet. We're going to do that right now. But before you do that, please like, subscribe,
and comment.
So let's go up to the top. Let's get to our questions here, where you get to interact with us here on the show. Let's start with Kate Anderson. Chris, how big of a factor do you think being a Nike school was in landing Coach Jones?
Well, I think it's certainly a great fit from that standpoint. Like, I wouldn't have seen the point of, like, Maryland hiring him. I mean, it would seem like a great idea from a regional standpoint for Maryland to hire him. But Maryland's...
Or from a shoe company standpoint?
Right, they're an Under Armour school. So they can't go in there and they'd be hiring a Nike guy to recruit Under Armour players, and again, football recruiting, basketball recruiting, apples and oranges. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes the hire even more attractive. And I talk about him being a short-term coach here, and compared to what Virginia Tech fans are used to, at least, and that might not necessarily be that might not be a big deal. I think he's one of those guys, the longer he stayed, the less effective he would be, maybe. Because now that he's leaving, guess what? DeMatha's next basketball coach is probably not going to be a Team USA coach.
Right.
So it's very possible that DeMatha basketball makes the switch to Under Armour, which is what all their other athletic programs
So there's
has.
a short shelf life on
Right,
his
right.
contacts and-
So Maryland hasn't signed a DeMatha player in like over 20 years, despite their close proximity, because DeMatha is Nike basketball and Maryland is Under Armour.
Right.
Maybe that flips
That
now
could
if they
change.
switch to
Yeah.
Under Armour. So that's just how basketball recruiting works. So it certainly made the hire even more attractive than it already was, for sure.
Will, Andrew asks, what do you guys think was the deciding factor for Jones to finally accept an offer to coach a college program?
That's a really good question, and to pretend like I actually know would be that would not be true. You can guess. Chris, how old did you say he is? 47? 47.
47.
So when Bill Roth went to UCLA in 2015, Bill was I believe roughly Bill was about 50 years old. There comes a time in your career where if you're going to do something, this is your chance to do it. And I know that in my conversations with Bill, he felt like, I've been thinking I should do something different. If I don't do it now, I'm never going to. So maybe that's part of what's going on with Mike Jones. And, maybe part of it is just like Chris talked about, wanting to be a college head coach.
Well, it ties in. I mean, he wants to be a head coach at some point. He's got to be an assistant first. If you're jumping from the high school level to college, you're not just going to get a head coaching job off, generally speaking. Unless you're Penny Hardaway. Right?
So he said that he had been approached for college coaching jobs for like the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Each year, the last 15 years. So it could be that maybe he just felt like the time was right.
Yeah.
And maybe it's something in the relationship between him and Mike Young.
Although Mike Young said he didn't really know Mike Jones until he took the Tech job, because Mike Young was never recruiting DeMatha level players.
I just think Mike Young's probably a really good guy to work for. Frank Beamer had that reputation. Right. Maybe the previous 15 years, the people that were approaching Mike Jones, he just didn't feel comfortable with.
I thought, and maybe the offers weren't for the associate head coach spot.
Right.
Maybe it was like the second assistant spot.
You're just a high school guy.
It was
Maybe
it was a mid-major, and not. But I think if you're looking to be a college head coach and then a Power 5 school in your region, and your shoe companies match up, you've got a chance to take that job and make. I assume he will make what Chester Frazier was making, or more. So
Maybe more.
That's $320,000 or more. You got a chance to do that for 2 or 3 years and position yourself to be a head coach. And you're 47 years old, and like you said, that opportunity may not come again, so you have to jump on it. So I think it was just great timing.
A lot of things lining up.
I also just want to mention this. I mean, you brought up a really great point. I'm not saying that I think his end goal is to become a head coach, right? Anybody who's an assistant coach is to become a head coach.
All of that is my guess.
Yeah.
I haven't actually talked to any of my basketball people about this, but that's my guess about the main reason he's making the jump. I think he wants to be a head coach, and I think this is the Kevin Keats route.
Yeah.
But my point is that if he wants to become a head coach, and you bring up a great point that I didn't realize that the ODU coach that I'm assuming he maybe played for when he was,
Jeff Jones was a UVA coach back then, and that. Jeff Jones was he's a good coach.
Jeff is 60 years old.
He's 60 years old.
So, I mean, you come here, you know the state well. You never know. I mean, maybe Mike Rhodes leads VCU to a Sweet 16 Elite Eight. Maybe he he knows the state of Virginia well. He played here. I mean, you go from Virginia Tech to another in-state school to become a head coach at mid-major level. I think that's a really, he's probably looking at the future. What could it turn out to be?
If you're VCU and you choose to hire Mike Jones away from Virginia Tech 3 years from now, that's way more palatable than hiring Mike Jones from DeMatha as your head coach.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyways, just the thought. Eric Fisher Eric, great to have you back, by the way, one of our avid
there.
listeners. We appreciate you. Wrestling has done well with former high school coach. It's a great point. Kevin Dresser was the Christiansburg High School head coach, and now he's one of the best wrestling coaches in America.
Hiring high school coaches translates better in some sports than it does in others.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they had Brands coaching him for a year, and Brands was a really aggressive hire by Jim Weaver.
It was.
And then he did what he did.
Never made another one after that either.
That's a whole separate podcast. what Tom Brands did while he was here, and then to go from hiring Brands to hiring Kevin Dresser out of Christiansburg, that was a stretch, and it worked out really well. Dresser's one of the unsung heroes of building a program at Virginia Tech Athletics, and I'm sure Tony Roby would totally agree.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of wrestling, by the way, when you guys are talking about doing a podcast, bringing our jerseys, I've been asked via text to bring my wrestling singlet.
That's got to be David.
As long as you don't wear it.
Exactly. As long as it's not worn.
So Evan's got this singlet that the wrestling program gave to him that I was over to Evan's house the other day, and it's framed on his wall, and it looks like it's about this big.
Like, I don't think Joey Prada or Sam Latona could fit in that. It's a tiny. I was asked of graduation weekend nearly 20 times to put it on. That will not be leaving the
You don't
glass
drink that
case
much.
No. So, all right, let's Billy Parvenham. I asked an earlier question about home and homes. You guys said money and how good the teams are is important. Mm-hmm. Is the Black Diamond rivalry happening because both schools are mediocre plus benefit from playing?
I think, well, gosh, you look at the athletic directors that were at those schools when the series got canceled. I mean, you have completely different leadership. It
was Jim Weaver and was it Oliver Luck?
Yeah, I think so.
Boy, Luck has really moved on to have a good career.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure who the West Virginia AD is.
No, I don't know
honest
either.
with you, but leadership changes over time. The thing is, with the exception of probably Doug Nestor, who unfortunately is not.
Time out. Quick. Did anyone see that side eye roll there from Chris? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure we pointed that out.
No player on either one of these teams has any idea of the history of this rivalry. Doug Nestor does because he grew up in West Virginia. And to be quite honest with you, West Virginia fans take the rivalry more seriously than Virginia Tech fans.
As a whole, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they get angry about it. I mean, downright angry, where they will, set things on fire and everything.
It was kind of even, I think.
Well,
until the whole ACC.
ACC thing, and they got mad.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm sure enough time has passed now where it's just not that big a deal, because I think I went to the Pittsburgh game in 2003, and their fans were awful, horrible, and it was because of Tech going to the ACC. Well, guess what? Pitt joined the ACC too, and now that's calmed their fans down as far as that goes. So I don't think that's going to be an issue anymore.
And there was the 2017 game at FedEx.
Oh, it was fantastic.
You can argue that Tech fans behave worse than the WVU fans.
Sure. I think the main issue with WVU fans are the ones that stay in West Virginia. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just the ones that the locals per se. I ended up in a West Virginia bar the night before the Tech Arkansas bowl game. The West Virginia bar in Charlotte is Whiskey River at the Epicenter. And I'm rolling in there having a couple drinks, and I see a couple people in West Virginia jerseys. So I'm like, huh. And then all of a sudden more and more people in West Virginia jerseys come in, and all of a sudden Whiskey River's blaring the WVU fight song, and I'm sitting here in my Tech stuff surrounded by all West Virginia people just like that. I'm like, uh-oh. They were awesome. They were all awesome.
Yeah.
They're the West Virginia fans that they went to West Virginia, but then they went out and got
graduated,
jobs.
left, went out and got
Right. Exactly. They've left the local culture, so to speak. Yeah, right. Yeah. So something like that.
Eric Fisher writes, to be fair, West Virginia fans set stuff on fire for any emotion.
That's fair.
Yes.
That's fair.
So
happy
or sad.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not really the answer to the question. I don't think it was signed up because both teams are mediocre, or however you want to call it. I don't remember the year the series was signed. It's a 3-game series: the FedEx game, and then one at West Virginia and one at Virginia Tech. I don't remember how good either team was when this series
I guess
was
Witt signed it, yeah.
I guess.
'Cause
Probably.
he came in February 2014.
And Luck might have still been their AD then.
Yeah.
I don't remember. But the thing about a straight up home and home is you don't have to pay, Middle Tennessee State $1 million to come to play one game in Lane Stadium.
Right.
Right?
Here's our football expert here at Tech Sideline, Jeff Holland, chiming in. 1993 Virginia Tech at West Virginia. The bus ride from the hotel to the game. A couple of West Virginia fans, elderly couple in their 70s, flipped the bird to the team bus. Also, after the game, the sideline was littered with batteries and small liquor bottles.
Yeah, I've heard in the 97 game up there, I've heard like West Virginia fans tried to turn over the team bus, like with the team in it.
Right.
I've heard that story.
Jeff knows you keep your helmet on when you're on the sidelines.
Yeah,
at
you
West
absolutely.
Virginia.
I remember. Well, I was on the sideline for that Pitt Virginia Tech game in 2003, and at the end of the game, the Tech fans were walking through the tunnel to go back to the locker room, and the tunnel to the visitors' locker room is right in the middle of the Pitt student section. So the Pitt students were all crowded around at the top of the tunnel, just throwing stuff at Tech's players and coaches as they were walking back through the tunnel. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. And Pittsburgh's only an hour away from West Virginia, from Morgantown. What it is about that part of the country? Like,
yeah, Chris has got this whole triangle theory that goes all the way over to include Philadelphia.
Philly fans. Right.
Philly fans.
Yeah, Philly fans.
Everyone's chiming in with...
to correct, Oliver Luck was West Virginia's AD from 2010 to 2014. So way back in the early 2000s now.
Right.
I just love everybody's chiming in with their West Virginia stories.
Gosh,
right? We have awoken.
Suddenly the chat is lighting up.
I want to ask this question, but no response, just because I think we can do a full podcast on it. What really created? Because I don't know the West Virginia Tech rivalry. Like what? Just because I think we could do a next
playing every year.
Playing every year. But here's the thing: I want to play West Virginia every year because we stopped playing West Virginia every year, and then Virginia went into the tank and stunk. Yeah. And it just took a lot of the emotions out of it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Who would you rather play every year if you had to pick one? Tennessee or West Virginia?
Dang, that's a good question.
West Virginia.
I don't know, man.
Come on, chime in, everybody in the chat here. Who would you, if you could only pick one every year, home and home, West Virginia or Tennessee?
I'd pick West Virginia 10 times out of 10 because their fans care. Tennessee fans don't care about Virginia Tech. They don't want to play Virginia Tech.
That's a solid point.
They wouldn't be into it at all. West Virginia fans would be into it. When you beat West Virginia, it feels really, really, really good because you lose to them sometimes. Like by the end of that streak over UVA, it was just like, oh, we beat UVA, ho hum again. And I met the President of the United States again. Like Forrest Gump, right? So it just, I mean, I'm not saying it gets old, but you lose the emotion of when you beat them every year, eventually you lose, a certain edge comes off. Yeah. The feeling changes when you beat them.
Okay,
it doesn't feel like an accomplishment anymore. I felt a lot better beating them after this past season because they had beaten us the year before, right? So beating West Virginia like in 2005 and 2004 felt great because they'd beaten us in 2002 and 2003.
Right.
Like football is not fun without emotions and rivalries and things like that. I would play them every year if it was up to me.
So I try to do a Friday poll on Tech Sideline Twitter, and a lot of times I have a hard time coming up with a question. I like that question.
Can we do? I would love to expand upon this more. Of like maybe we do a podcast over the summer because folks, we're gonna have not a ton of content to talk about. Maybe we do like rivalries that are most important to the Tech fan base. We come up with like a top 5 list, and I think that'd be it. Because right now people are going back and forth in the chat right now. Tennessee, West Virginia. So
I'm really excited about this season. The reason I'm excited about it is this is irregardless of who's coaching Virginia Tech, what anybody feels about the coaching situation, and any of that. Week 1 is North Carolina, who is, for me, has developed into just about the team I want to beat more than anybody every year. Mm-hmm. That's week 1. And what is West Virginia? Week 3? Week 4?
Week 3. At West Virginia.
You got, oh my gosh, that first month of the season, like my emotions as a fan are going to be running high, and I look forward to it.
I will say, as somebody, I mean, Malcolm and I, right, we are 21 years old. The last time that West Virginia played Tech at either West Virginia or Tech was, we were in elementary school? We were like 5 or 6. What was the last time they played before 2017?
2005.
So, I mean, you could go pull the entire 25 and younger. Like, we have no idea that's, will the passion and intensity be there?
The 2005
this year?
West Virginia game, honestly, for me, that's one of my most anticipated games ever being a fan.
At WVU, the Marcus Vick flip the bird game.
Right. And that ESPN put that game at noon, probably under pressure, so a night game went out there.
That didn't stop Marcus from flipping a bird.
You're right. And I don't defend hardly anything Marcus did, but I'm sure that bird was well-deserved.
Ooh, he heard some stuff during that game,
no question. Yeah. I mean, just because of what the rivalry had gotten to at that point. I mean, I remember the feelings of the week heading into that game. It was a big game because West Virginia was unbeaten going into that game. Actually, that turned out to be West Virginia's only loss that year.
That's true.
They were unbeaten going into that game. Tech was unbeaten, but just what the rivalry had turned into at that point since the 2003 game, and Tech had left the league. We knew it was going to be.
The 0-1-0-2 losses were painful, and then the 0-3 loss.
We beat them in 0-1.
Beat them in 0-1. That was Rich Rod's first year.
Yes, that's right.
But the 0-2 loss at home.
Right.
And then the brutalization.
And I worked for VT-WVU at the time, and our cameraman who was on the field swears that Lee Suggs got into that end zone. He had the camera right there on the pylon.
Which year?
2002, when they stopped us on the goal line stand.
Wow,
towards the end of the game.
I do not recall that.
Oh, it was 4th down. They stopped us on 4th down.
Goodness.
Yep.
All right, so let me pose this question, then we can wrap it up with this, because I think it's a great way to close it all up. Scott chimes in. Favorite rivalries, of course, UVA, Miami, West Virginia, recently UNC. Does West Virginia or Tennessee top any ACC rivalries that Virginia Tech has besides UVA? So let me put that in a different rephrase that. Does the West Virginia-Tennessee rivalry top, essentially, am I asking, North Carolina, Miami, are those more important to you than any of those ACC rivalries?
Yeah. I've for me personally, like for the last few years, my main focus every year is what day do we play North Carolina? That's the one I circle as soon as I look at the schedule. Yeah. It wouldn't be that way if West Virginia was on the schedule. That'd be the one I'd be circling every year. Like I know when we're going to play UVA. But
and the thing about Miami is that they're
fans. Well, they don't have any fans.
Well, it's not just their fans. It's the fact that they're playing Miami's literally a crapshoot.
Right.
It's like I can't find the way to phrase it, but you just have no idea what's going to happen, and you don't really care because and what I mean by that is lately I've walked away from the Miami games going, oh, Miami decided not to show up today. Or I've walked away from the Miami game going, oh, Miami decided to show up today. It's completely random.
And that takes sometimes I wonder, like, I like writing game previews, but every year I know it's a complete waste of time writing the Miami game preview.
Just write a 3-paragraph preview. Right. Yeah. And say, well, so go, that one drawer at home where you keep a pair of dice, go into that drawer, pull out the pair of dice, and if you roll a 2 through a 6, Virginia Tech will win. A 7 through a 12, Miami will win.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm looking forward to
emotions, man. I don't get that emotional anymore, and I shouldn't because it's my job. But when we talk about West Virginia, man, I got pretty emotional today. And that game needs to be played, man. And it's unpopular to say this, but like, I don't know, a lot of Tech fans don't want to play it, but like,
why is that?
They had a bad experience in Morgantown.
Which a lot of comments here are saying that there have been.
Like, the ones who are actually there don't want to play them anymore.
Yeah, right. Well, I went to Pitt. I had beer bottles thrown at my car, as I was circling the stadium. Doesn't mean I think we should cancel the Pitt game.
So do you think
I think we need to toughen up as a fan base and play West Virginia. If you don't want to go to Morgantown, then don't go.
Does the gap from 05 to now, excluding the neutral site game, do you think that'll tone down the passion, emotion, energy of will it be like the 05 environment?
When you don't do something for 15 or 20 years, it loses its relevance and intensity.
Yes.
Okay.
No question. No, it would take some sort of an incident for it to for it to. Maybe we should bring Marcus Vick out of retirement. I'm sure he can start something.
Let him do the third quarter. Let's go Hokie.
Oh my gosh, I've even got the jersey. Can you? Oh my gosh.
We should take Marcus Vick to Morgantown as honorary team captain.
Well,
if we really want to jumpstart this rivalry again, we should let him do the coin toss.
So I'm thinking about all the pictures of Daryl Tapp doing the Let's Go Hokies when he came out and did it. Before he became a coach here. And can you picture if they trotted Marcus Vick out there to do that?
Oh.
Every single photographer in the place, there'd be this huge wave of photographers just running out to midfield.
Oh, gosh. See, this is what I love about the YouTube comment section part of the podcast. You never know what direction we're going in. So thanks to everybody for the comments. Our first show in nearly a month. It's great to be back. We've got great content planned for the summer, of course, on the website. But also we'll keep it going with the podcast as well. So, Chris, we're an hour and a half in. We'll wrap things up. What's coming up on Tech Sideline this week?
Oh, I'm about to go immediately get started editing a Brandon Patterson article. I think this is the final article in his offensive series, and then we have to sit down and figure out what he has to do after this. And I'll do another PFF article tomorrow, Friday Q&A on Friday, as usual.
And we've got a preview of the NCAA softball regional coming
also,
up.
I posted it this morning. Great article, great feature by Corey Van Dyke on Anthony Simonelli, Virginia Tech Saturday starter.
He's electric.
He had to have Tommy John when he was in high school. Then he went to Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina cut him. And now he's at Virginia Tech. And really, really good pitcher, and has put himself in a position to possibly be drafted.
Did you see when he struck out the UVA hitter in the 7th? And he just kind of got all down and just looked and pointed at the dugout. I mean, he didn't point, but he kind of stared right into their dugout. I was like, man, that guy's got energy. I love watching him.
He's got a ton of energy.
So that's on TechSideline.com. And Will, any articles up right now that you encourage people to go back and read?
What have we?
The Mike and Mike connection. You got to go read that one.
I spent, and that's actually a good example of I pushed back all content from yesterday just to write that article. Whereas if we were in the middle of basketball season or football season and something like that happened and I was editing a bunch of other articles, the article I wrote yesterday on Mike Jones wouldn't have been as good because I would have had to do a bunch of other stuff, edit other bunch of
insert David Cunningham.
Right, exactly. And as it turned out, I thought my Mike Jones article yesterday was really comprehensive. It was one of the longest articles I've written in a while because I gave myself more time to do it, and it helps because there's no sports going on right now.
I'm telling you, man, David Cunningham's going to make us a lot better.
There we go. What a great podcast. Great to be back. Looking forward to more shows coming up. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen, before we wrap things up? Besides like, subscribe, and comments.
No. Just, wish Evan and Malcolm congratulations. And I know people are concerned about the future of the TSL podcast. Don't worry about it. We'll
take care of it.
Yeah, we'll keep it going.
Jeff chimed in. This is my last show. This is not my last show. Don't worry. So,
right. Yeah.
That'll wrap things up for us. Thanks so much to everybody for watching and listening. And we're presented by the Southeast Regional Training Center. Go to southeastrtc.com today to get involved with Virginia Tech Wrestling and everything that they have going on in Blacksburg and here at Virginia Tech. That'll do it for us. For our managing editor, soon to be a new title, Chris Coleman. Across the way, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart. Behind the scenes, the best podcast producer in the land, Malcolm Stewart. I'm Evan Hughes saying so long. Thanks so much for watching and listening to episode 179 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Have a great week, Hokies.